Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Seeing God in the Everyday.
Hi
We're
guys.
outside.
We are. Welcome to Florida,
This is
everyone.
it. This is the beauty of Florida. Well, hi, honey.
Hi, babe.
This is nice.
It is nice.
Well,
For those of you in our listening audience who aren't seeing the video, it's a wonderful tropical normal Florida backyard.
yeah, it's beautiful with no grass and beautiful tropical plants and stuff everywhere. But we are having a special Seeing God in the Everyday because we are celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary.
Today.
Very much today.
Today's our anniversary and we're spending it with you.
Yeah, we are. And so we are so excited to come to you this week with Seeing God in the Everyday on our anniversary special. It's not our Seeing God in the Everyday anniversary special, but it's our anniversary special. Yep. So we thought that we would do just something different this week. Being outside is one of the things because it's just so stinking beautiful here in Florida and to be outside. And it's evening time, so the sun's gone down. You get the nice glow in the background and stuff.
And the screens to keep the mosquitoes out.
Yes. The one bad thing with Florida is mosquitoes, obviously. And when we don't have like a really harsh winter, which we had a cold winter, but it wasn't.
It wasn't sustained though.
And we didn't have any like real like freezing days.
Right.
We had like 1 or 2 days where it got down below freezing, but it was only for a couple hours.
It was Florida cold, not actual cold.
Yeah. It's nice to have a good like hard freeze for a couple days, and that kills off the mosquitoes and stuff, but
they are thriving this year.
Yeah, they are everywhere, and we are in that in-between time. So in Florida, we spray for mosquitoes starting in the late spring, but we're not there yet. So we're kind of in that in-between, so the mosquitoes are everywhere. So thank goodness we have screens. But going back to why we're outside, because it's beautiful, and why we're doing something totally different is because of our anniversary. And we thought that we would have a special anniversary kind of special, fun time. But we wanted to kind of dive into a little bit of who Becky and I are.
Yeah.
And how we came to be a couple and how we got married and how 30 years has just zipped by and we cannot believe that we've been married 30 years. But when we look back, it's been an awesome 30 years. It's been so much fun. So we're going to do this kind of differently, and Becky has no idea kind of how we're going to flow with this. So
which is normal.
Yeah. So what I thought I'd do, I'm going to ask her some questions, and we'll just kind of talk and banter with these questions and stuff. Is the first things first, we already talked about this afternoon, is that we don't remember when we first met.
No.
I do remember a little bit of when we first met because we were high school students.
Right.
You were a sophomore. I was a junior.
You were the older guy.
I was the debonair older guy. But I was sitting in the band room. Yes, we were band geeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
brass.
Yep.
Dan was brass. I was percussion.
So yeah, so we had the whole 9 yards going down. We were there. We were in marching band, so we're adding to our thing here. So we were in our marching band preseason.
Right.
And I looked across the room and I saw this beautiful little redhead in the percussion section. So I go to my best friend, who was a trumpet player at the time, Ray, and I go, "Hey, buddy, see that beautiful redhead over there? I'm gonna marry her." And he looked at me and he was like, "Dude, you're insane. You're not gonna marry that girl." And I'm like,
3
no.
years later, Ray was our best man at our wedding.
And I was like, "No, I'm marrying her." And 3 years later, Ray stood next to me as my best man in our wedding. And ever since that moment where we kind of got together and we kind of we had a turbulent high school.
It was high school. We dated on again, off again.
Yeah, it was one of those things. And I was the older guy, and I was stupid. Didn't know the Lord at the time. Didn't know what was good for me. And so we were on again, off again. But then we started dating, and then I said, "Hey, let's start dating again, and I'm going to go in the military."
Right.
So something that we've never really talked about is that when I left to go to the military, I kind of I was by myself, and you were the only person that I was really talking to.
Right.
What were you thinking at that time when this was before we were married and everything? What were you thinking, like, what is this guy doing? He's writing me letters about the book of Leviticus and
Oh, that
trying
was
to
later though. That
Yeah.
was after we were engaged.
but what were you thinking as, like, this guy who's like, we're dating again, now he just leaves me?
Well, it kind of wasn't like that. The one thing I do remember about when you left, so Dan graduated in May,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was on a bus to basic training on July 4th weekend. I will never forget that.
Because I'm very patriotic.
That's right. His mom and dad and I took him to the bus station and put him on a bus. And I remember handing you a letter. Letters were big in our dating years.
Yes.
It was, y'all, this is the early 90s, 1989,
We've been
1990.
89. Yeah.
So long distance phone calls cost money, y'all.
Yeah. You write lots of letters.
You write lots of letters.
If you're like me and you can't write, you buy
send
a little
audio.
You buy a little tape recorder that you would use, like college students would use to get, for their lectures, and you just talking to them for hours.
And hours. But I remember I had written you a long letter and handed it to you as you got on the bus. And I was like, this is it. I was head over heels. We were already, before you ever went to basic training, that time we had only been together again for what, 3 or 4 months?
Yeah. Well, I think it was like we started going back out, like it was at the end of March.
Right.
So 1st of April, because the trip to Washington
D.C.
Yeah, it was in April. That was when I showed my colors. I was actually starting to turn into a good guy.
So we'd only been together for a few months, but we were already talking that this was going to be lifelong for us. And so, so I sent you off with a letter, and I think kind of in my heart and my mind, it was, well, we're just going to weather this. And, we had already started talking about engagement and marriage at that point. And I think the commitment was already there. So it wasn't so much you're leaving as, well, we're just going to have to weather this and make it work. And letters and audio cassettes really became a big part of our courtship. And it was fun. Part of that that I think was good for us is that we had dated through high school. So we had kind of been around each other a lot. And but even though you're around each other in classrooms and in hallways and in band activities and things like that, it's not the same as sharing all the nitty-gritty day-to-day.
Right.
And partly because you were so isolated from everybody, a lot of those audio cassette recordings were all about the really mundane everyday stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I can remember in doing a lot of that is that, I was talking to you about, like, the things from, like, how do you shine your shoes and make the bed and stuff like that.
Oh, and poor baby that got an ingrown toenail one day and walked me through the entire procedure.
Yeah, because you have to do surgery on yourself, because you can't, when you're in the military, you can't have bad dogs. You got to keep your dogs happy.
It was so romantic, y'all.
Yeah. So moving forward, and you still had another year of school yet.
Right.
So you had to finish high school and graduate. And then I get this great idea of, okay, I'm going to war.
Well, that wasn't really your idea.
It wasn't my idea, but let's get married. So we had planned to get married, and then I go off to the Gulf War.
So we were supposed to, let's timeline it. We were supposed
91-ish.
We were supposed to get married in December of 90 because I graduated. Yes. So we were supposed to get married in December of 90, but in October of 90, you were sent overseas for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Right.
So then that was a whole nother thing because we were now separated.
That's when Leviticus happened.
Yeah, that's when it got serious. And so we had a lot of cool things that happened during then, where I was kind of learning who I was, being separated again, but I was basically when it came to my faith, and I was really starting to step into that because we were in a situation where I had to be real about it, and I couldn't hide, I couldn't whatever, because you're in a tent with 14 other guys,
Right.
and it was just all out in the open. And so then I give you a phone call, the war's over, and I could call and say, listen, I'm gonna get on a plane here in the day or two,
Right.
and then I'm gonna get 30 days leave in April. We got to get married in April.
Right.
So I fly home again. So, and then we get married.
Right.
With,
Well, you're taking the fast track through the
yeah,
whole thing, right?
we get married. Well, and then we move from Florida to El Paso, Texas, because I was stationed in El Paso,
Right.
Texas, in Fort Bliss. I was in the Cav. And so here's this young girl,
Mm-hmm.
got married. You're 18 years old. Yeah.
18.
18.
Or 12.
Or 12, compared to, depending on what people might have thought.
He got absolutely dressed down by a very protective older lady in our church in El Paso for stealing me away from my parents at 12 years old.
I don't know what
I
they
was
do.
18. I just looked really young.
Yeah, I don't know what they do in that state of yours, but here in Texas, they don't marry that young. And I'm like, well, she's 18. So, but you pack up everything.
Right.
You're getting married to this guy now that you've known for what? We've been dating on and off now almost 5 years.
Right.
And you move all the way across country. How did that feel? Can you go back and think about this? Okay, I'm going to start this new life with this guy and head over heels of, because he's dashingly handsome and just this great guy. But you had never really, you've been very attached to your family.
Right.
You were like your cousins and your mom and dad, your uncles.
So I have a big family.
Yeah.
My mom is the oldest of 5. We all kind of lived in the same town. Christmases, Thanksgivings, things like that. All the cousins got together. It was very much culture shock.
Yeah. So what was that like? You're gonna pack up and now start a new home and new life and new house with some new guy? Well, not really new guy.
Not really new. I kind of knew you pretty well by then, but yeah, there was definitely that culture shock experience of it. Oh my goodness, there is nobody that we know, and I'm not one of those people that just walks into a room and makes connections with lots and lots of people. I tend to be the person that walks into the room and observes for hours before I'll interact with anybody. I don't really put myself out there a lot. So yeah, that part of it was a little scary.
Yeah.
But the part of it of moving cross country with you and starting life with you, that part was just one big massive adventure, and I was so excited and so ready for it.
Yeah.
Probably about it. Definitely a little bit naive about how much that was going to take work, and how, it wasn't just going to all fall into place readily and easily.
And I think one of the things, because we've talked about this, we've actually talked to other couples about this, is that we look back and we say one of the greatest things that we had in our marriage was that moving across country. And remember, folks, this was back in 91, 92, when you couldn't just pick up the phone and call because it was expensive. Long distance phone calls were expensive, and no one had cell phones at the time, so it wasn't like that. But we had to figure things out on our own. We
absolutely did.
And we had to figure things out together. And when we had arguments and disagreements and heated discussions.
Oh, that first little apartment, it was 500 square feet. It was a 500 square foot apartment. I could sit in the bedroom and see every corner of the living room. And I will never forget the one fight we had. I don't remember even what it was about, but I do remember being furious with you over something, and you were equally furious with me over something.
Sure.
And you were sitting on the couch, and I was sitting in the bedroom, and we weren't going to pay attention to each other, but we could still see each other.
Yeah, we could still see each other because our apartment was so small. But that thing of, we had to work it out.
Right.
We had to figure things out, because if we didn't, there was no one there. to really help us. So that was very interesting, but I think it was good. And that was one of the things, like I said, we talk to young couples and we tell them, you guys have to come together, as a new man and wife or as a new couple, you guys got to come together, and you guys got to learn how to figure things out on your own, because that's how it's going to be.
Right. You have to fight for each other, not with each other.
Exactly. You got to be able to fight for your marriage and fight for your relationship. And I think being by ourselves all the way out on the other coast, basically, it helped us do that. And I think one of the other things is that there was a sense of adventure for both of us.
There was.
And we took advantage of that. And this is something, again, I would tell young couples, you don't have kids. You're madly in love with each other. You're exploring the world and each other. Go have fun.
Do the spontaneous, crazy
things. Do those
things.
things. Yeah. And I think of some of those trips that we took where we just packed up and drove to the Grand Canyon with no money and an ATM card that didn't work on the west of the Mississippi. So
we didn't know that, though.
Yeah, we had no idea our ATM card would not work. Again, this is 91. You couldn't just... There weren't just ATMs everywhere, and we're driving in the middle of nowhere. We have like $50.
Adapt and overcome, right?
And we have no gas. We're trying to get a hotel. I mean, it was insane. We ended up going to the most sketchiest part of town, and where were we?
Phoenix, Arizona? No, it was Flagstaff.
We were in Flagstaff, Arizona. And they go, oh yeah, there's an empty shopping center.
Right.
That has an ATM that still works. There's no power, there's no lights on at all, but the ATM still works. That one might be good for you. And sure enough, that one had money for us. So
we got to have our Grand Canyon adventure after all.
We did. And so take advantage of those opportunities of when you're new married to be adventurous, to do things that you wouldn't have done by yourself, and now you're doing it with each other. So you're exploring those things, you're building those memories together. And just have fun and realize, if you stay in a sportsman's lodge, where when you come up to the hotel, there's basically more dogs out front.
They're all tied out for the hunters that are there.
Because all the hunters are there with their dogs, and beer cans are just covering the floor. And you get into your hotel room, and at least it's a comfortable bed, and the shower's warm.
You're good to go.
Yeah, enjoy those moments together because they are special.
They are.
They are special.
I think too, one of the things that helped us through that time period, because as much as we very much believe in make sure that it's about you two, we also, one of the things that helped us with that process of making sure that it was about fighting for each other instead of with each other, was that we did find a couple that was very much a mentor to us.
Yes.
They weren't mom and dad, and they weren't grandparents, but they were absolutely mentors to us. They kind of took us in. They made it safe for me, who was very shy and very, kind of just let me get to know you first. They didn't push. They just made us aware that they were available, and they cared about us, and they invited us into their home. And they actually, their daughter was a missionary in Japan at the time.
Yep.
And so they shared a lot of her things. They opened up their lives to us, and it made it safe for us to open our lives to them. And Morris and Joyce were our people. And
it was fun.
We met them at church.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all, make it about you two,
but
make sure that you get around people that are going to support you being you two.
Yes. Well, and that was definitely the next thing to talk about, is that you're going to have to make connections
somewhere.
And, don't be afraid as a young couple to make connections with an older couple.
Yep.
And that was something that
was such a huge blessing for
and
us.
it was an incredible blessing. It taught us a lot, and it helped us in our time where we were learning and trying to figure things out. So we spent a little bit of time in the military, and we tried to go to Germany.
We wanted to go to Germany so badly.
I had put in to transfer, but no avail. But then I got out,
Right.
and God had called us to the ministry, but we felt we needed to go to college first, so we're going to jump ahead. We came home for a while, did some college, then we went to Northern Florida, went to college there.
Right.
Then we went to Liberty University
Right.
in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is gorgeous. I still tell everybody
Favorite place we've ever lived.
That's right. If I have a place to retire, it is going to be somewhere in the mountains of Virginia because it is just beautiful. Love it up there. But that's where we started to really come into our own of not just ministry of who we are, but as a couple. And also, this is where our first child comes.
That's right.
Is we get pregnant with Benjamin and have our first child there in Lynchburg. And that was a whole nother change.
Yes, it
Whole
was.
nother things, because now we were not just Becky and I just doing our thing and going to college, and now we had, Benjamin, we had the child, we had to think of that extra person, everything
Yeah.
we were doing, and it made everything a little more serious for me, I'll say, like getting that job and making sure you were paying. Before it was like, we'll pay our bills, we'll go down to the scratch and dent store. Let me do that. We'll go down to the scratch and dent store and just find some cans to eat food or whatever. But now, when you got a child,
Oh, you're painting a picture there, babe.
well, for a little while, it was kind of that way.
North Florida was a little bit like
Yeah.
that, but
Now we had to be a little more serious. Had to put those things in perspective. But it wasn't bad. It was good. As I look at it, honestly, where it started getting really difficult was when we made that jump to Texas. So after I graduated college, decided to go to seminary,
right.
which if you're called to go to seminary, go to seminary. If you're not called to go to seminary, you don't need it. You don't go. Trust me, you don't need it. I know those of you who want to send me bad comments, if you're a counselor.
Don't invite that.
Yeah, don't. But if you're called to go to seminary, go. If you're not, don't feel like you have to go.
Yeah.
Because,
don't be pushed into it from somebody else's expectations. But God did use that time.
Yes, and we learned
God
a lot.
God doesn't waste anything.
Right, but those were very difficult times for us. So I look back at that time when we went to seminary in Texas as that it was so difficult. I was very sick because
Right.
I had gotten sick because I was working 3 jobs, going
You
to
were
school full
exhausted.
time, had a
Yeah.
new child. It was difficult. It was really hard. Loved the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Absolutely.
So I don't have any ill against Dallas-Fort Worth. Matter of fact, I think Dallas-Fort Worth area is like an amazing place, and I
Yes.
would move back there.
Maybe not to the neighborhood we moved into.
No, probably not there, since no one would deliver us even pizza in our neighborhood that we lived in. But that experience did teach us a lot, because again, it was that thing that it just
Right.
kept growing us to not only rely on each other. We were starting to learn this thing of relying on God, to intertwine Him more and more in our relationship and our family and everything that we were doing. And it was a growing time, even though it was a
absolutely
difficult time.
Well, and I think that's been true of all kinds of. In retrospect, it's nice that we've been together long enough now that it's easier to see it in the hard moment, to go, oh, I see how God's using this,
Mhm.
or I'm already in a place where I can trust God to use this. Back then, we had only been married 7 or 8 years
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, well, no, it would have been more like 6 years, 6 or 7
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
So at that point, it was more a thing of kind of gutting through it and hoping that we knew that God was going to get us
Yeah.
on it. And then we were able to look back and go, oh, wow, okay, so here and here and here, He really did, take care of us. But those were hard times. We
Yeah.
had a lot of decisions to make. We had to decide, am I going to stay home?
Yeah.
And because early on, we had discussed that whenever we had children, I was going to stay home with the kids and Dan was going to work. But when you're also going to school full time,
Yep.
that becomes a stressor financially.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard.
And also you were working 3 jobs and going to school. And, I still say that half of that degree is mine, but so do you too.
Yep.
Because every homework assignment, every paper that was written in those years, every project that was turned in, man, we did that together. And it was all you doing the research and putting it together. But when it came to compiling things and typing things out and doing the proofing, that was us together as a team. So it really did solidify that teamwork stuff. And I think it helped because not only were we doing the schoolwork together, you know, you were doing the working, I was doing all of the household stuff, made sure that you had food to eat, made sure that you know, all those things were taken care of. And then the baby was very much a tag team effort. You know, Ben was both of ours. And
he was, because
everything in our life had to be both of ours at the time.
Yeah, and that was,
there was no surviving if it was that's your venue and this is my venue, you know.
Well, and I can remember, I mean, there were times when because I like you're saying, I would do all the research, I would do all the stuff, but then I would just be exhausted to write the paper. So I would do baby duty or hold the baby or feed the baby and then dictate to you.
Right.
So you would
so
type,
I'm typing.
you would type while I'm, you know, feeding the baby and stuff. So we learned how to work together and how to intertwine our lives together so that we were complementing each other with what we were strong at.
Right.
And we saw that just continue to grow and to grow and to grow to what we're doing now. And again, it's all these little milestone things as you look back. Right. And you go, wow, those were the things that got us to this point, that got us to this point, that got us to this point, so that we're doing what we're doing now.
Well, and I do, you know, one of the things over the years, we've had a lot of people look at us and go, well, how do you guys, I mean, we'll have whole conversations without talking.
Right.
I mean, we can look across the room and there's this whole interchange that goes on and we know exactly what's going on. And people around us see it and they go, how did you get there? How did you get to where you know each other so well that words don't even have to be spoken? And it's because of stuff like that. Yeah. It's because we had to get to know each other really well. We had to depend on each other, you know. And I guess, you know, big back pat here on both of us. We chose it.
Yeah. So we chose this. We were actually going through this, and it helped because we were working it out. You know, we talked about it last week where we said that, you know, you've got to work on your marriage. You've got to make sure that you're doing those things, investing in those things in your marriage. And we were actively doing that, even from a young age, and a young, I guess, stage in our marriage.
I think part of that too, you know, we talked about Morris and Joyce and what an incredible mentorship that was in our lives. Even before that, you know, when you had called and said, hey, we're going to get married in this month, our pastor who married us, Brother Jim.
Yeah, Brother Jim.
He led us through some premarital counseling. Yeah. And one of the things that he absolutely emphasized was, guys, it's not going to be easy. No. And so when you commit to this, you need to commit to this. This is a no way out situation. You've got to make it through.
Yeah, and you've got to work hard.
Right, and I think that was one of the things that we took very, very seriously from the very beginning. And so when it got hard there, and we just kept reconfirming, sometimes every single day, that I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you again today. You know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there was also during that time we started to have those things that affect you, like some tragedy stuff and some really hard things. We had a blessing where my mom and dad actually came out to Texas.
Yeah.
And
that was such a God thing. Oh my goodness.
And we, my parents bought this huge house that we moved in together, which was a huge help for us financially.
Right. They had downstairs, we had upstairs.
It was great. And my mom actually was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Very soon thereafter.
It was within the first year that they were there. And so we had to go through that ordeal and that struggle. And that was some of the stuff we got to see my mom and dad go through that. And you helped my mom out a lot because you went with her to the chemo and stuff. And so we got to learn from these things that we were going through, they weren't tragedies to us. They weren't,
Right.
same thing with like the not having the money and working the multiple jobs and all this. We never looked at them as tragedies and stuff. They were difficulties, but we kept learning from those things and we kept
Right.
growing on those things. And I think, again, it's the seeing God in the everyday. It's what is God doing in this? Where is he
Right.
working in this? Where is he showing us? Where is he leading? And what is he doing to equip us
Right.
to make it through it?
Where is he
And-
giving us strength when we don't have it anymore? Where
Right.
is he? The time when your mom was going through chemo, not only was the house a blessing to us,
Mm-hmm.
because we were looking at low rent apartments at that point.
Yeah. Like I said, we couldn't get anyone to deliver any food to our apartment.
So
No one would.
But so it was a blessing to us financially, but having us there not only to help cook and clean and care for her and all. Benjamin
Mhm.
was 3.5 at that point. So they had little itty bitty, adorable, blonde haired, light of the life grandson living there, just
Yep.
being a constant source of fun and encouragement in a
Tumbling
really
down the
difficult
stairs
time.
and everything.
And throwing Hot Wheels cars over the stairs.
Yep. Yeah, it was fantastic.
It was God's provision at the time, and it was good.
Yep.
It was hard, but it was good.
Yep. And then to continue moving forward through our 30 years extravaganza here, is I get a full-time position, ministry position,
Right.
in a little place called Nederland, Texas, which is down southeast Texas. It's right on the border with Louisiana. And so it's my first position as
Right.
a full-time minister, pastor, youth pastor. And it's a church in transition. It's a church
Right.
who just had all their staff change over.
And let's be honest, we were in a bit of transition too,
And-
because we had just been through some serious church hurt, y'all.
Yeah, and
which we will not go into.
we already had a situation there where we were in Burleson, Texas, up in the Fort Worth area, which was very difficult.
Right.
But we go down to Nederland, and things just explode. Things just really take off. The ministry's taking off. The church is taking off.
Right.
Our marriage is doing well.
Mhm.
We are now blessed with another child.
And then another one, and then another one.
Well,
We're not there yet. We're
no,
just at the second
we're gonna
one?
we're
Okay.
gonna pause for just a moment on that
See,
second
I told
one
you I didn't know the program for today.
because I did a thing. So,
Oh, you did a thing.
So what happened is the church owned 2 houses.
You're going to
And
tell everybody about
the
this?
church, well, hang on. The church wanted us to move from one house to the other house. Well, Becky was 9 months pregnant at the time, and I'm like, that's not happening.
Somebody
We're
was
not
afraid
moving.
to tell a volatile pregnant redhead about this.
Yeah,
that she was moving a month before she was due.
we're not moving, a month before the baby comes. And so I came up with this plan with my youth leaders and everyone else, is that we would move our house when Becky goes to the hospital to have Reese, our second child. So we're going to the hospital. I literally had to step out, call one of my youth workers and say, they've told me they're definitely the
baby's coming.
The baby's coming. We are staying. It's definitely happening. We need, plan 0 needs to happen right now. D-Day needs to happen. So what happens is an army of people go into our house. We had not packed. We had not done anything.
Because one of us didn't know we were moving.
We had owned a ferret, and ferrets are just little
they're
creatures.
Adorable, but they're very messy.
But they're very messy, and you just have to keep cleaning them all the time. And if you kind of let it go for a couple days, you pay for it. And needless to say, we'd let it go for a couple days because 9 months pregnant. And so we moved the whole house, the whole thing, whatever. So Becky has no idea. We come home from the hospital. So I got car, whatever. Becky's parents are now here. We're driving in. I drive by our house, and she's like, "Wait, there's our house." I go, "Oh wait, I got a surprise for you." I still haven't told her yet. Number one, I was a little bit afraid. That's a lot afraid, but
You should have been.
but I was like going, "This house is so much nicer." In my mind, I was like, and it was a nicer
But
house.
I had already seriously nested in the other house. It was ready for a baby to come home to. And y'all, I'm a little bit, organization is a thing for me. And things are in their place. And things have a place to be in. And I'm coming home with a new baby, and I knew where everything was, I thought.
So we come into this new house, and I say, "Here we are, we're home. This is our new house." And she was very gracious, and
That was
very
only
sweet.
because my mom and dad were there, and I was
We
not
go-
going to
we
take
go
you
into the
apart in front of
house.
them.
We go into the house. We move into the house, and it was, let's just say, it was a struggle, emotionally, spiritually, physically.
I could not find my face soap. I had been in the hospital with their face soap, and I wanted my face soap, and it was nowhere to be found.
So,
And that was the breaking point.
but I look back at all these things, and we, again, one of those things of continuing working through it. And we did continue to work through that.
We did.
And it was rough, and I'll admit. And I admit
He
my
never
mistake.
moved me without my knowledge
I admit
again.
my mistake. It was wrong. I got bad advice. Whatever. It was wrong. But we had 2 more beautiful children there at that house. So it wasn't too bad. We survived.
Yeah, we did.
But we were leading into kind of one of the toughest times of our marriage and one of
Yes.
the toughest times of our life.
Yes.
Because what you had is we had a situation where, again, a successful church, successful ministry. I've got 3 young children at home and a 7-year-old, 8-year-old. No, he would have been.
See, Benjamin was
He'd been almost 6
when Reese was born,
So-
and then he was 7 when Michael was born, and then he was 9 when Nicole was born.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stress and pressure of what was happening at home.
Right.
Then there was a lot of things that started happening where this is where we started to do the quote unquote protection game.
Yeah.
It started a couple years prior to this, but this is where it
got
really
bad.
started getting
Yeah.
bad because I was seeing your struggles and what you were going through at home with the kids and stuff, and then my job and my ministry job was taking so much time from, I was leaving at 8 in the morning, not coming home until 10, 11 o'clock at night on some nights, most nights.
Well, and overarching all of it was the fact that this was a very nice, beautiful home that he had moved us into. It was also immediately on church property.
Right.
It was a parsonage. So those of y'all that have experienced living in a parsonage, you will commiserate a little bit
Yeah.
here.
Another one of my advice to young married couples, if you're in ministry,
Have your own house.
have your own house. And I'm just going to say this, I'm not being ugly. Don't live in a parsonage on church property.
Right.
It's just
Because your
it's
home is
so
not your
difficult.
own.
Yeah.
Your home is not your own, and part of the weight that was causing my stress was knowing what the expectations were
Right.
from everybody in the church about every aspect of my life. There was not just an expectation around the ministry portion of my life. There was
Right.
expectation around my housekeeping. There was expectation around my parenting. There was expectation around how I decorated and planted flowers in my home.
Yep.
People would stop by at all hours and just expect us to have the door open because, this is the church's
Right.
parsonage, and
Yeah.
it was
And-
never our home.
Right.
And so there was that expectation on top of some pretty unrealistic expectations
Right.
of what ministry should be and what ministers should provide
Right.
for
And-
others.
And it got to a point where it was a huge struggle.
Yeah.
And both of us were starting to not only pull away from each other, because now I had my ministry that I was doing and you had
And
your
I
ministry.
was the happy homemaker.
And what
Right?
it was doing, it was actually,
Yeah.
believe it or not, and I'm saying this as honest as we can be, the church was literally pulling us apart.
Yep.
Because of the expectations being put on our family, that I had to be there for every event because I lived there. So if anybody wanted to do something on Saturday, my door.
Well, you had keys.
Yeah, they knocked on my door to open up the church so that I could turn the lights on, so I could do this and stuff for them. And this was not a small church. This was a church that ran about 600 people.
Right.
So this was not a small place. It was a pretty big place.
And lest you think that we are blaming everything on the church.
No.
Okay, please don't hear that. This was what was happening, and in part what we came to understand through a lot of talking it out,
right,
and a lot of praying it through, is that there was a foundational issue with this,
right,
with us, because we didn't set a boundary around our marriage. We didn't set a boundary around our
right,
home and go, you know what, this is important. You know, early on we said, you know, we separated from mom and dad and went halfway across the country, and it was us.
right.
It had to be us. Well, at some point along the way, there were so many voices from other people that we started listening to more than we were listening to each other.
Right.
And we started taking on expectations or perceiving expectations that weren't necessarily there, and
Yep.
and becoming willing to jump through those hoops
Yeah.
to fulfill all kinds of expectations without looking at what was God actually asking of us and what was protecting the marriage
Right.
and the family first.
Right.
And so we completely own and are aware of our role in this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is you talk about, different stages of your marriage, and how at the beginning of it we worked really hard to build each other, and then there was a point where we were, so we know that looking back at the the stages where we worked hard at the beginning,
Right.
Maybe we thought we had arrived or something, and we had to continue working hard just
I think
because
our focus became so much on ministry and raising children that we forgot this was a marriage first.
Right. Well, and we forgot the partnership
Right.
that has to happen, where marriage is a partnership. It's a union, and it has to be worked at. It has
Right.
to be something that you're willing to spend time on. And if you get lazy on it, it's like everything else. If you get lazy on it, it's going to start decaying. It's going
Right.
to start falling apart.
And sometimes it doesn't feel like you're getting lazy. It feels like you're working your butt off.
Right.
But you're working your butt off in all these other tangential
Right.
things.
And we were working our butts off.
Absolutely.
We were working. I was working, 6 days a week, if not 7 days a week. You were working nonstop with
Yep.
the children, because we had 4 little ones at the house.
And I was teaching preschool at the time.
It was
and
just,
yeah.
it was crazy what we were doing. But we weren't spending enough time with each other. We weren't working on what we have. We weren't
Right.
working on our marriage. We weren't growing in our marriage. And we started to actually pull away from each other.
Right.
And, you hear this a lot in ministry,
Mhm.
that ministry became my mistress. It became the other woman,
Yeah.
because I was spending so much time there. And again, I'm going to keep saying these things, but if you're young, married, and you're in ministry, you've got to put boundaries up. You got to
Yes.
protect yourself, because it's going to destroy you. There's always another opportunity.
Right.
There's always somebody else who
Yeah.
needs you. The world's hurting. The world's dying. The world needs people to love on them. And if you're going to just completely empty yourself to do that, you're going to lose everything else. And if you're already married, you have your wife that you have to take care of. You have
Yeah.
to minister to. You have to be the leader of. You have to work together to have that marriage work. Again,
Right.
Paul going back to saying, hey, man, better be
Stay
single. Better be single. But if you get married,
Right.
you better make sure that marriage and that wife is taken care of.
And absolutely, pour yourself out and sacrifice everything for what God's telling you to do, but be very, very careful that you have the discernment to know the difference between what God's telling you to do
Right.
and what people are asking of you in a ministry setting. There's tons of good stuff. There's lots of hurting people you can pour yourself into.
Right.
If God's not telling you to make a sacrifice here, and if you and your spouse are not on the same page about that sacrifice that you're making,
Yeah, it's not.
Don't.
Yeah. And that's, again, that's where
Lessons learned, y'all.
we are definitely we've learned the lessons the wrong way and the hard way, and it's why we now can say no so easily and so freely, because it's like we know what saying yes will do sometimes.
Right.
We don't say no every time, but sometimes you just got to. So in the middle of this hard time that we're having, the church starts to go through a little turmoil.
Right.
The pastor gets very sick.
Right.
There's some issues that start happening. There's some accusations that start getting thrown around. There's some attacks that start happening on our family.
It got ugly.
There's some attacks that happen on me personally.
Okay.
But,
some of which I didn't know about at the time.
Yeah.
Guys, this goes back to the whole partnership thing. If you're under attack, if there's something coming against you and you don't share it with your spouse, you're not working together.
Right. And there were some of those things where I was, quote unquote, protecting her.
Right.
But what it did is it just made it heavier and heavier on me, built in some resentment, built in some pain.
And on my end, I was sitting there going, he won't share this stuff with me. He doesn't trust me. He just sees me as Susie Homemaker now. I'm just the mom of his kids.
Yep.
But I don't want to hurt him because I know he's under pressure and stress. So I'm not telling him where I'm coming from.
Yep.
Because I want to protect him.
Yep. And
y'all, we were idiots.
And it was a difficult time. Now, we had already been married at this point. We're married 10, 15 years.
Yeah, because Benjamin would have been 9 or 10.
Yeah, we would have been
about
married
15,
16 years. We've been married. So we've been doing this for a while, and we were struggling.
Yeah.
The ministry started to struggle. Our church relationship started to struggle. People we were having relationship with in the church were struggling. My relationship with the pastor was falling apart. The pastor ends up leaving.
Not because
of me. I want to make that straight. I did not make him leave. But the pastor leaves, and it just turned into even more turmoil, because now there was a battle between some of the leadership in the church and me and some of the staff, and it was very hard, and we were hurt. We were hurt from the church. We were hurt from each other.
Yep. Because
we weren't working on our relationship with each other. We felt very lonely. We felt very much on the out. It was a us against the world type thing.
But individually.
But we weren't even us. It was me and her against the world. And we walked away. We left the ministry. We left the church.
Yeah.
We moved to Florida.
We said we signed up for pouring ourselves out and possibly being destroyed to serve the Lord. But politics and power games, we're not willing to destroy ourselves over.
Yeah, I don't play.
We had a real problem. We're just like, done.
Yeah,
just done.
And so we walked away, and we walked away from the church. We moved back to Florida, and guess what? We're gonna stop right there. So what we thought we were going to do, or what we're going to do, is we're going to actually have a part 2 of this next week.
Right.
See what we did there? See?
Yeah.
See what we did? So next week, we're going to be in some other exotic location. Sure, why not? And
we might take you to the living room.
Yeah,
Stay tuned.
Who knows? And but we're going to go somewhere else, and we're going to do part 2 of this, where we're going to talk about how, when we hit our absolute low, the things that we did that helped build us up out of this, how to get to the point where we are today, and looking forward at, 30 years is just the beginning.
Well, and just to give you a little bit of, it's probably obvious. We're still sitting here, but
Yep.
guys, it was bad. It was bad. We were done with the church. We were done with relationships, done with people. We were on the edge of calling it done with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the only thing at that point was, what are we going to do with these 4 little kids?
Yep.
If we split. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, at that point it was just
We're done.
What's up with the kids?
Yeah, we were hurting, and
Yeah.
it was bad. But you guys see where we are now. So there's been restoration. So don't go away like down.
That's right. That's right. We'll have a good ending in part 2.
It's a happy story.
So, but I hope you guys are enjoying this. We're enjoying doing this. We love doing the Seeing God in the Everyday. Again, this is a little bit different, but it's 30 years.
Well,
Okay.
and if you haven't been able to tell yet, what we've done, maybe the same thing twice in a row on these.
Yeah.
We like different, that whole adventurous spirit we talked to you about when we first started dating and marriage.
We just love doing it.
It's still
different.
kind of us. We like different stuff.
So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe, and let other people know. Share it. Let other people know that this is something that you're enjoying. Maybe they'll enjoy it too. Maybe you have a young couple that's just got married or thinking about getting married, and this might be something that helps them out.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this. Listening on the podcast, thank you so much for listening on the podcast. We love doing the podcast as well, and it's just it's fantastic to know that people from all over the world, because we are getting downloads from all over places in the world on the podcast. So thank you so much. Please, again, like, subscribe, let other people know about the podcast, and hopefully it might be a blessing to them. The other thing I want to mention is every week Becky does a blog, and it is so exciting. We're seeing hundreds of people every week that are reading the blogs and getting blessed by the blogs. Yeah. So if you haven't seen our blog yet, right now the only way you can read them is go to Facebook. Go to Facebook/Seeing God in the Everyday, or Facebook at Seeing God in the Everyday. And every Monday, or Tuesday once in a while, but pretty much every Monday, the blog goes up, and they're right from Becky's heart of experiences that she's seeing and that we're seeing together with God, and some history of some other things that we can go in more depth with. And it's a characteristics of God is what you're focusing on this year. And so they're just focusing on the different things that different characteristics of who God is and in our everyday lives. So go to Facebook, Seeing God in the Everyday. If you type that in, you'll find it. Like the page, and you'll be able to see that blog every Monday. So that's where we're at this week. That's how we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger. Okay? And be back next week for Seeing God in the Everyday as we conclude the next 15 years of our marriage.
That was the halfway point, wasn't it?
Yeah, kind of worked out good.
Wow.
So I didn't even plan that part of it. So worked out good. So thank you guys again for listening and watching, and we love you all so much. Like and subscribe, and keep seeing God in your everyday. Okay? All right.
Love y'all.
Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.